I ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I get to say this because I wasn't here last week. Happy New Year, everyone, from me. I hope everybody's having a good 2020, and I hope it's a good, healthy, prosperous year for everyone. Do we have any public comment from the board this evening?
No.
No, I only have one. Well, I guess I can do it under announcements.
Did you do the in accordance?
Oh, no. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. Thank you, Mrs. Luck.
You're welcome.
Any public comment from the public? Mr. Passios.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Mr. Chair, as you were not here at the last meeting, I don't know if you've seen the recording of that meeting, but I spoke at that meeting and I intend to speak myself or have a representative at all the BOS meetings up until about the middle of March, until such time as the charter is certified. I made public comment at the last meeting that I was really distraught that 8 months after the charter was approved at town meeting and sometime over the summer, the warrant being certified, that we still do not have a certified charter because it has not gone to the legislature. And my deep concern is that the change in the number of members to the Parks Commission needs to go to a ballot in the spring. And if it isn't certified by March, then we can't open those seats up for election. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we reached out to?
I did right after that meeting again.
Okay.
To council. Yep.
To council?
Yep. Council's handling.
Okay. Has he reached out to any of our representatives who would be filing this on our behalf?
He has.
Of which now they're.
To prepare what's going to be filed. Beyond, so maybe it's better to have him respond to this.
So what is the missing link?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So
why isn't it accomplished, I guess, would be good for us to understand.
He, based on another town that MTC works for, and the way their charter was similarly done as ours, it came back from the state legislature with comments. So he wants to make sure those are addressed in the ways our charter is submitted.
Okay. But it's still, to Mr. Passios' point, it's still 7 months or so.
How can it be submitted in any other way than in which it
With
exists?
commentary. I'm sure there's commentary that it'll be submitted with, but, I mean, to
That's
your point, Mr. Passios, I know that it's clear that special legislation, which this was filed under, sometimes takes over a year. I just want to make sure where it is. So I'm not surprised that it hasn't been done. I just want to know where it is. And if we were banking on having that done, we should have done so with the foresight that may not happen, because special legislation has its own, and if it doesn't pass by the end of this legislative session, then we have we're going to have new representative, of course, in the end of March anyway, but then everybody changes and potentially is up for a re-election in November, so it'll start a whole new session. So hopefully we can talk to our representative. If we can get an answer about where that is and when it's going to be submitted to our delegation. Okay, any other public comment? Announcements. I don't know if this was announced last week, but I'll be announcing it every week that we have a meeting. That Unitil has filed for a rate increase for their gas and electric, and that the filing and public hearing has been issued by the DPU, and that the rate hearing in this area will be on February 26th, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the Fitchburg Memorial Middle School, 615 Rollstone Road in Fitchburg, Mass. So any persons interested in commenting on this matter may appear at the public hearing or file written comments with the Department of Public Utilities not later than the close of business 5 PM on February 26, 2020. So again, I would encourage people to attend these hearings, and I will not be here during that time. I'll be away on business, but I'll try to file something in writing.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
Since we are part of a, what, aggregate as a community, is that what it's called? We have a reduced negotiated rate.
Yep.
It's
But that's for
For supply.
supplier, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the delivery increase.
yeah,
No, no, well-
distribution, which is part of delivery.
Got it. Okay.
It's going to be part of their infrastructure that even though we're part of a municipal electric aggregation, we are still subject to the delivery and wire charges and all that. Yep.
All that tree clearing must come at a cost.
So. Okay. Any other announcements? Do you have any announcements?
No.
Okay, so we have interviews, appointments. We have a resignation of a DPW equipment operator.
Yep, Brian Clark of the DPW resigned a couple weeks ago. So there's another vacancy at the DPW.
Now, another means that there was one already. So how many vacancies do we have?
Currently, we have 3 heavy equipment operator positions vacant.
So if I realize this is televised, but I'm going to ask anyway. So why are we having problems filling these? And what are we going to do to address that? Because I think some of those were vacant for a significant length of time.
Been told it's rate of pay, as far as we're not competitive. We don't pay competitively.
Okay.
Obviously, you'll see this across the state too. I mean, you've seen it in the news, I'm sure, about snow removal operators. All cities and towns are having trouble finding snow operators. Just, there's a demand, there's a high liability amount as well for towns. So, as for the employee or contractor doing the work. But I think it boils down to mostly pay and the economy right now. So they can get better paying jobs in the
What
private
kind?
industry.
Primarily, do they need CDL license?
Yes. Yep.
Would be the key feature. Do we need to address how we pay? I mean, can we operate without any operators?
We have 2 still, but we do need, I mean, we've been actively advertising and seeking, to fill these positions.
What's the pay discrepancy in terms of a private job and a municipal job in that space? Do you know?
Private, I don't know offhand what it would be.
Do you know
Yeah.
what the other municipalities around us are paying?
We're doing a comp review right now.
Okay, so we are addressing this at least by
Internally.
analysis. Okay. All right.
Because as we go into
that's
the
the next
budget
question.
season and we look at other type of jobs that people are looking to add, we may need to look at those of which we already can't fill.
Well, we only have, you said we have 2 still. So.
So
if
now
we were
3 total.
full- If we were full, we'd have 5 if we were
Yes.
completely employed. And so we have less than half. Okay.
And if I can ask a question as well, is it, sometimes in the current market, everyone wants to hire someone who's skilled and qualified and everything. I mean, are we willing to train people?
Yes, actually, our contract allows for a waiver for them to get their CDL if they don't have one,
And is that at the expense of the town, or is that at their own expense?
at the expense of the town.
Okay. Well, that probably changes the equation then. Are we, I mean, I don't want to get too detailed into this, but are we advertising that? We'll
The,
train?
no, that's not part of our advertisement. Yeah. I'd have to look actually if it says CDL preferred
Okay.
on the advertisement or not.
There may be some
But
people out there
people
who
have
want to
applied
do
that
it.
don't have their CDLs, if that answers your question as
Yeah.
well.
Okay, I've had people apply that don't.
Right,
Oh.
Okay. All right.
but still the rate of pay, they wouldn't accept the position because of the rate of pay.
So I think doing a comp is the next one.
Well, doing the comp is one, and are other municipalities having difficulty even with higher pay, filling positions.
That I'd have to have a conversation with other towns.
I just want to make sure that if there's some, because I know that we've been chronically understaffed. You know, we always seem to be looking for somebody, and I know some jobs are more turnover than others, but the DPW seems to have been difficulty getting at full strength, and we really need that. And in the winter, we really need that. Okay.
We use contractors to supplement.
Yes.
And I appreciate that we do exit interviews now, so that way we can get the data on how this happens.
Who does the exit interviews?
Julie's handling those.
Oh, great.
And we have a retirement of an administrative assessor assistant, the dreaded AAA.
You know, this is, so Louise Paquette
Oh, wow, okay.
is retiring.
Really?
In April. Yes.
Good for her.
So she's been here 31 years in different positions, the last,
Wow.
I think, 11 in the assessor's office.
I know before that she was at the
So-
clerk's office. And
So we're going to miss her.
yeah, good for her.
When you guys have that, I went to school with her kids. Would you mind sending me an invitation to her going away party?
Certainly.
Thanks.
Okay, and right into the town manager report.
Okay. A lot of this the board has heard because I've sent out emails on announcements. But starting off, announcement of existing vacancies. There's one regular member and 3 alternate vacancies on the Agricultural Commission, 1 vacancy on the Americans with Disabilities Act Commission, 1 vacancy on the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 vacancy on the Finance Committee, 1 vacancy on the Open Space Committee, 1 vacancy on Planning Board, and 1 regular member and 2 associate vacancies on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And talent bank forms can be obtained from the town website or by stopping in or contacting the Board of Selectmen's office. An update on 925 Mass Ave. As I provided in my town manager report last week, I attended a meeting at MRPC on January 8th to see if the site nomination form that we submitted for 925 Mass Ave for Phase 2 site assessment costs would receive funding through a Brownfields grant being administered by MRPC. We were successful in getting funding, and the Montechusett Brownfields Group voted to proceed with an initial $20,000, and we'll have a future meeting if additional funding is needed. Shyla Matthews of Mass Development was at this meeting as well, and she said that the town would be eligible to apply for grant funding for any potential cleanup costs for this project as well. Everyone seemed to think this was a great project for this program and excited about the possibilities, as am I. Complete Streets Award. I'm very excited to relay that I was contacted by Mass DOT on Thursday that we were successful in obtaining the Complete Streets grant that we applied for this fall. The grant amount was for our full request of $258,460 for the Main Street at Oak Ave sidewalk connection, an improved pedestrian crossing from the Ritter to Town Hall, and improvements to the village area and Memorial Drive. I want to thank everyone involved in getting us to this point, especially the DPW director and Rich and Bill at World Tech Engineering. ADA Public Rights of Way Transition Plan. As the board is aware, the town was one of 3 communities that was chosen by our regional planning agency, Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, to participate in a municipal ADA Public Rights of Way assessment and creation of a transition plan. Stantec, the engineering firm that was hired by MRPC through a competitive bid process, has completed the plan and it is available for review and public comment until February 11th. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public meeting on Tuesday, February 11th, 2020 at 7:05 p.m. to review, discuss, and adopt the plan. All are welcome to attend, and written comments can be sent by emailing them to myself, town manager, hlemieux@lunenburgonline.com, and it's LEMIEUX.
I had also asked that, because this is pretty lengthy, did these get printed? Did these get printed out yet? The ADA Public Rights of Way?
Not yet,
Oh,
yep.
okay. Because I
But
asked,
they will be.
instead of trying to read, I'm not good at reading 72-page documents on the screen. I'd rather have the hard copy personally. So I asked the town manager for us to print them out.
That's
Thank
good, thank you.
Recycling Public Forum. The public forum on recycling will be held tomorrow evening at 5:30 PM at the Eagle House Senior Center. The executive director from MassTOS, our regional municipal coordinator from DEP, the recycling supervisor for the Recycling IQ grant program, a representative from Casella, and myself will be present to discuss and answer all recycling-related questions and to further promote proper recycling habits to reduce contamination in recycling. The clerical and fire collective bargaining agreements are set to expire at the end of this fiscal year. We have our first session with the clerical unit tomorrow, and a date has not been set for the initial meeting with the firefighters. Labor Council will be attending the Selectmen's Meeting in executive session on January 28th to prepare for negotiations. And upcoming meetings, events, and other announcements. The TCP Building Design Committee is meeting on Thursday, January 16th at 6 PM at the Ritter Memorial Building to review the RFQs that were received, and will be interviewing firms on Wednesday, January 22nd at 6 PM in the Town Hall Meeting Room. And Chairman Alonso already spoke about the notices of filings that Unitil filed with the DPU regarding potential rate increases, distribution rate increases, and that public hearing date.
Didn't mean to steal your
No.
thunder.
The more it's said, the more people will.
Yeah, that's true. Last time we had one, there was a full house because it was at Fitchburg Elementary School again, several years
I
ago.
have a couple comments.
Sure.
Thank you. Now, I know, I'm wondering when discussion will begin on the design of the improvements that were awarded through the Complete Streets.
Probably as soon as, they should be immediately happening, because the work has to be done by June 30th, 2021.
Because I know that we
So-
tossed around some ideas, but I don't think anything was.
Yeah,
set
so it'd be a good
in stone.
idea to set, a time, I can work with the chairman on setting up an
Yeah,
agenda
because,
item.
especially like the things on Memorial Drive, we thought maybe you could try, if we're thinking about making it one way, that might, the police chief thought it might be a good thing to try before you spend a lot of money on it, to see what the hiccups might be to such a plan.
Mhm.
And I guess this isn't on the town manager report, but I was wondering, I'd like to understand the flow of the fiscal presentations between now and town meeting, what's happening when. And I don't have a clear idea of that. It's probably my mistake, but if I don't, maybe other people don't either.
So the 5-year financial forecast is next week, the 21st,
At
to
this
the
meeting?
board, and then presenting to the finance committee on Thursday. Capital plan is the same dates. The 28th is when we said we'd have a public meeting with any questions from the public after the financial forecast.
So question,
So that should be part of this announcement tonight. The 28th is when, it's kind of a follow-up to the forum that the FinCom put together in the fall.
and probably as well as the 5-year forecast and capital plan as well.
Well, people can ask anything. I mean, we should leave it, that's the only thing that should be on the agenda. After the 5-year forecast, we should open it up, and if there can be nothing else, that's what we should do.
On the 28th or the,
Whenever this forum, you're saying the question and answers are going to be.
yeah, the 28th,
Yeah.
Okay.
besides the executive sessions that we
Right.
have.
All right, thank you.
Is that here?
Yes.
Okay, anybody else have any questions about town manager report? Okay. So then we will go into, let's get rid of any current business. Can we do the warrants and action items first?
No minutes.
No minutes. Accounts payable, $442,367.19.
That's it.
And you said no minutes and no action. Any action items?
I actually have one. It's on the senior tax work-off program. I know that last year they decided to raise the pay to the minimum wage, which was $12 at the time, but now that minimum wage has been increased, I would think the respectful thing would be to raise that, to bring that up to the current minimum wage. You know, we're offering this program to the citizens who can least afford to stay in town. We're offering them $1,500, and if they will volunteer to do work for the town. And it seems disrespectful to offer them less than minimum wage. And I would like to have it set up so that the tax work-off program just increases it when the minimum wage increases.
We should just change the wording then to the tax write-off program to say prevailing minimum wage.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Can we do that? We'd have to-
Well, I think it should go before the tax write-off committee.
Yeah, I agree. But we should propose that. You can submit that to them.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
There is a committee for it, and I think it makes perfect sense, and I'd be in full support of that.
Thank you. I'll do that.
Do you have the change of manager license that had that typo? That we're supposed to say.
I do not have that. I can see if it's on Elaine's desk later.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, we're also doing committee reports now?
Yes,
Okay.
right now.
All right. I have a committee report.
Yes.
So I went to the Council of Aging meeting this morning, which was very good. So I have to say, it was really. I read the notes and I get the mailings every month, but I was really surprised at just how enjoyable that meeting actually was. So having said that, so a couple things were mentioned tonight, that they are close to hiring a new van driver, and they wanted to specifically thank Julie, our new assistant town manager, for her assistance in that. Sue Doherty mentioned that previously with all hires, it was a lot of work on her side, and now having this position filled, it just really makes the whole thing a lot more streamlined. And I did have the opportunity to let Julie know that personally earlier today. Also, the HVAC is currently being replaced with the funds from the state grant that's been going on for the last week, and that will help add heat and air conditioning, new systems to the meeting room there. One thing that came out of the meeting today was, the tax work-off program was mentioned, and it was noted that there have only been 7 applicants for this so far. Out of all the people who, potentially may be eligible. So the question that came up was, is it possible for us to contact people who owe taxes and inform them that this is an option? Is that something that we can do? So I'm not sure if what board would do that. I can talk to you afterwards, Heather, to get some guidance on that. But that seems to be something that would maybe be beneficial as an opportunity. They also talked about 2 really cool things programs that are going on over there. One of them is called Armchair Travel, which is someone goes on a vacation and they present slides of those vacations as well as videos to highlight kind of where that place was. They also do like a sampling of some food from that area. So that's a pretty, I think, cool thing that's going on over there. And then another area is a program called Care and Kinship. And this is a support group that's being started for grandparents who are raising their grandkids. So I encourage everyone to look into the programs that are offered by the Eagle House. They really are quite extensive.
Excellent. Any other committee reports?
Yeah, I have one. I attended the Montezut Regional Transit Authority meeting this morning. They announced that they've just received a $165,000 grant to work with Council on Aging to see if they can help make transportation services more efficient. They're planning to meet with each COA individually to find out what their needs are, and they're going to with this grant, they're going to set up a pilot program based on the input they receive. One thing they're going to do is let the Council on Aging keep their van drivers if they become involved in this program, to make sure the Council on Aging have that personal touch to the van driving. They know that Council on Aging want that. And as opposed to having the dispatch come from the central office, which many people complain about, having, let's say, they have a Lunenburg dispatch, do Lunenburg, Shirley, Air, Townsend, make it more homey, again, more personal, because somebody like Amanda would be doing those calls. And so they think that, and they also want to do, sometimes the vans have to go to Boston, and if they have to take somebody to Boston, then that van's not available for the whole day. So they're thinking about regionalizing that a little bit. You get 5 towns, maybe 3 of them have somebody going to Boston, so they take one bus to Boston, so the other towns can keep their vans in service in town. So they're trying to think outside the box and use this grant to make better opportunities and more efficiency. I think they've been listening to the Council on Aging folks, and they're trying to make progress.
Excellent. I got a correspondence from the library director before he resigned, and because he moved out of town. Mr. Ebersol was liaison to the library, and the library director wanted to know if we were going to appoint somebody to be liaison to the library. So I said I would bring it up on the meeting, which I am now, if anybody's interested. If there is no interest from anybody else, I don't have any problem being that liaison to the library.
So the
Board
current
of
director's
Trustees.
moved out of town?
No. The current library director is asking me that now that Bob Ebersol, who was the last liaison, it was never reappointed in the last year.
Yeah. Do you know when their meetings are?
I'd have to check. I don't know.
All right.
But
Be my question too.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be interested depending on when the meetings are.
yeah,
If it's something I can actually attend.
we know when the library board of trustees.
Yeah, I can
meetings
look.
are. I'm sure it's online.
Yep.
What was the night we had the Selectmen's Ball? Was it a Thursday? Because they were heading there. So I'm going to
Yes.
go with
The
the
Thursday.
Thursday.
It's a Thursday, 6:45. I can do that.
Okay. You
Unless
have it.
unless you
No,
want
no,
to.
I was offering, but
Well,
if you
we
want to
could
do
have
it,
2
feel free to do
liaisons.
it. Can we let library
Muir,
director?
no?
Yeah. Sorry if you referred to Muir by his official title.
Thank you for offering to do that.
Yeah, no problem. I'll go to the meeting
I think
this
it's an
week.
important role.
Okay, so we get to the workshop. So tonight's workshop is working on objective number 2, which is to identify, define, and propose at least one project to the 2020 annual town meeting regarding the use and/or reuse of the old primary school building and/or the land on which it sits. Excuse me. So we have done action I, which is review all of them because of the formal thing. So I guess what we're looking to do next would be to view those through the lens of what criteria we want to evaluate any potential projects. Now, before we do that, I want to come back to what I handed out here. So this is a tabulation of the town poll or informal poll that we did at special town meeting, asking people to rank their choices of the 6 options that we had discussed and that Mr. Jeffries was so gracious to put together the ballot for. And because we asked people to rank them, I figured it was a good idea to actually employ ranked choice voting, and that's what this shows. So the title page, the first page, which is this, is the tabulations, and beneath it are the actual votes themselves that I want to thank Elaine Peterson for putting them in a spreadsheet. So these are, each row is a different ballot and how people voted on their choices. 1 being the highest choice, 6 being the lowest. So if I can just step you through it, the first stage, which is starting from the top of the page, the first row, was just ranking everybody's first choice. So the parking lot with green space got 13 votes, which is 13%, and senior housing got 21 votes, which is 21%. As it turns out, the first round of voting had 100 votes. So it just was easy to do the percentage. So 10
convenient.
votes for a small business building. Town Green got 31% of the vote with 31 votes. Town Hall got 9, using it as a town hall would, or actually knocking it down, building a new town hall got 9%. Renovating the existing building to be town hall got 16 votes or 16%. Now, the way ranked choice voting would work is that none of these reached 50%, a majority. So I eliminated the two lowest, which are C and E. And if all of those 90, you eliminate as many choices as would give if one choice got all the remaining votes, it would get it to 50%. So if all of those 10 and 9% went to the 31% of Town Green, that's why I eliminated two. So by eliminating choice C and E, we go back to those people who voted for choice C and E to see what their second choice votes were. And then we got to round 2, which put the parking lot and green space at 17%, the senior housing at 29%, the town green at 35%, and renovations to be town hall at 18%. Following through, we eliminate the lowest one, which is the parking lot with green space. And those votes for choice A were looked at, and their next choice was taken, which made senior housing 29%, town green 45%, renovations to town hall 18%. We eliminated the renovations to town hall at 18%, looked up their next choice, and then came to the final round, which had senior housing at 39%, 42%, 39 votes, I'm sorry, and the town green at 58%. So that is what, using ranked choice voting, that's what people chose, to make it a town green. So, just wanted to go over that, so we got a fuller sense of what the poll showed, and also, because ranked choice voting looks like it's going to be a ballot question, I think it is a ballot question, people can get a feel for how that works.
And just to clarify, I know that town green, parking lot with green space were very high up there, but what, do we recall how many votes initially, just looking at it as if this wasn't ranked choice, how popular senior housing was?
Yeah. The
21.
first one, 21 votes it got.
Got it, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So, that probably will be used, I'm assuming, to some degree, to inform our choices for the workshop. I don't know that it was a surprise. The only surprise, there were two similar choices, the parking lot with green space or a town green. So, now we know that it was town green. So I'm going to open up the discussion to anybody who wants to start. I mean, but we need to basically start filling number 2. You know, we need to fulfill action number 2, which is overlay the results of the previous action, which we've completed, with the short and long-term needs of the town, viewing those through the lens of an established list of prioritized criteria. So we come up to what we're looking to submit.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Mrs. Adams?
if my voice allows.
Yes.
So when I think about Old Primary, I mean, there's a part of it where you can look back in time. Everyone knows I love history and preservation, and a lot of people do. And then there's the future, and I'm always worried about the schools and the future population. And then there's the present. And presently, we're just not doing anything at all. And so I'd like to just hyper-focus on like a very simple thing, which we talked about last week, which is to maybe just accomplish the hazardous waste assessment. It's not very expensive, and it gives us data to help us step in any direction. So to me, that feels like a no-brainer. It doesn't push us in one direction or another. It just helps us remediate and deal with hazardous waste, which we have to do if it's torn down and we have to do if it's renovated. So I don't think we're going to have a gigantic achievement in this space at this point. We haven't allocated any capital money to deal with Old Primary in any capacity for this season, meaning like this town meeting. So I don't see that we're going to be able to really offer anything other than if it's like a non-binding idea like we did at the last one, and we already did that. Demolition was voted to be okay, or, I mean, they were in favor, the town voted in a majority to say, yeah, hypothetically, we'd knock it down. We could do another hypothetical in the spring, but we don't have any funding or articles prepared to fund anything real like a demolition.
Well, but that's what budget season's coming up, so,
But I feel like the budget's being created, and I don't know if are we prepared to allocate money for it? I don't think it's been in the capital meetings, the capital planning meetings. It's not on the docket anywhere so far as I can see.
It's on the capital plan, but not, wasn't included in the projects that were recommended for fiscal '21.
That's what I mean. So at the very least, if we could put $9,000 or $10,000 towards one little thing, at least we can say we're working on our goal. Not that we've done nothing. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense what you're saying. I would go further than that, though. I think that people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. You know,
Yeah.
something this speaks to a bigger issue, which is, you know, I think we have to think of how do we get here, which in my conversations with the town manager privately, not privately, but outside of meetings, I've talked about and I've talked about this when I was on the Charter Review Committee, about the necessity of having someone who manages buildings in town. Now, we do currently have that underneath DPW, but what I'm getting at is that, you know, speaking with residents, they are frustrated that we have these beautiful new schools, and then we have these vacant buildings that everyone's looking at, and we're turning ourselves in kind of circles. But how do we get to this position? You know, if we were like other communities around us who have professional staff who manage facilities for the town, then what you gain from that is when you're looking to end the use of a building is you have someone that puts together those plans that can go out there, kind of do that research for you. You know, in order for something to happen in town, it takes a lot of energy and effort. And I think of like the complicated planning board articles that come out, and it's because they have professional staff who assist with that process, who are skilled and talented in what they do. And when it comes to buildings, our most expensive thing here in town, we just don't. We have people who are able to perform maintenance, but our structure of government is putting this underneath DPW. And looking at the other towns that have good buildings, that don't have a bunch of vacant buildings sitting around, what are they doing? They have facility managers. That's what they're doing. So I think that whatever we do, that we need to develop. This isn't going to be a 2020 goal. This isn't going to be a 2021 goal. But I think that we need to develop that role that creates a management structure for our buildings, so that way we don't find ourselves in this position ever again. Having said all that, I think that we need to tear this building down. I think that we should first see if we have consensus on pursuing the option that Selectman Adams suggested, which is doing the hazmat survey, and that seems to be a logical first step. So I don't usually make motions here, so so I don't want to break the tide here, but I will second a motion that.
I don't think you can
Why can't
second a
you-
non-motion.
why can't you make a motion?
Well, I mean, I will make the motion. I move that. Well, normally I don't. As a junior member, I try not
No,
to make two
everybody
motions.
You
There's
can
no
make a
junior.
motion.
I move to. Before I make this motion, what are our thoughts about taking the funds that we previously allocated to fix up the building and instead spending that money on getting this hazmat survey? Because that was a decision by the board previously.
I think some of that was like making sure that the sub pumps are working and stuff, and in the meantime, I wouldn't want to get in the way of the $7,500 of what were sort of deemed potential safety efforts, because the building's still gonna be there a while we do all this.
The sump pumps have been purchased already, but that's the only thing that's been purchased.
And then it was like plywood
Yeah.
for like a window. I feel like we didn't allocate the money for the more expensive roof part of it, but then we did for the sort of safety maintenance items. And I feel like the building's not going to be gone as fast as we may like it to be. So I think we can hopefully find the 9,000 or so from somewhere to do both.
Do we have, Mr. Chair, to the town manager, do we have resources to find $8,000 to fund this hazmat?
I'll have to re-examine, as I did in the fall, when we discussed the roof project and the temporary, repairs to the envelope of the building, reassess the facilities budget and what projects have been done outside of the annual maintenance contracts and repairs to town buildings. So once I do that exercise, I'll have a better idea, and I'll work with the facilities director as well.
And the other item that goes along with all of this is if it were to be torn down, we have to seek permission. And even if we're given permission, it doesn't mean we have to, but we can't unless we have permission.
What do you mean? For the
So like the
architectural-
Architectural Preservation District.
Yeah.
So I think that we should go through the process of requesting it and getting that ball rolling, because it can't ever be an outcome if we don't have permission. But if we go through that process and they deem it a reasonable thing and they do vote to give us permission, just because we have been given the permission doesn't mean we need to do it, but we can. And I think that's another thing we can do to head towards achieving something that we have to start or it'll never happen. These are hurdles we have to get over. I think we have somebody who's been following along who has input ready.
I'll call and let the board speak. Well, I'll get to you. I'll get to him. I've seen him.
I think that puts us in I think that I hear you, because our rules do say that we have to seek permission to tear this building down. However, it's a body that we appoint. So, in theory, if we don't like their decision on this, we can decide not to reappoint them and get people who will go along with what we want.
But all we have is what we have.
whoa.
So,
No, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to be like nefarious.
You're
and
not
crazy
saying, you
here.
just said. What do you mean you're not saying?
I'm not, I guess, I'm not.
See, you want to see the list that the town manager had that's vacant? You
Of
want to see the
course.
list grow enormously?
No.
Just tell people if they don't vote
We
the
will
way
just
you want,
cast you
you're going to
aside.
But I'm saying that there is an undue pressure that if we're coming to them as the appointing body and saying, we want you to do this, to approve this building to be torn down, that on their side of it, I can't speak for the Architectural Preservation Commission, I can speak for myself. If someone who appointed me into a role then came to me and asked me to do something related to my authority, I would assume that may be tied to whether or not I'm going to be reappointed next time.
volunteer free position.
True or not.
That would influence
but
you.
it's not
True or not?
it's not a pressure, it's just a process, and it's the only process we have, and we have to go through it.
No, but I think he's really illustrating something pretty dark here.
Well, I'm not-
To be very honest. I don't want to get too heavy on a workshop, but
I think it's too complex.
what you should be asking as a selectman when you appoint somebody is that they uphold the bylaws
Of
that
course.
the town, but you just said that if somebody came to you and kind of put a little bit extra pressure, you would change your vote because you may not
No.
be
I think that we all sit here as honorable, respectful people, but I think that when you have the authority to appoint a body, and then you go to that body to get permission to do something, that it's almost like to me, I perceive it that if that body were to say no, that this body still has the authority, when they're up for reappointment, to appoint someone else, if there were other applicants.
That's so complex.
And I'm not saying that we're going to do that, but I'm just saying that I just don't know if that's, my point here is that really a necessary step?
Of getting permission?
Correct.
Of course it's a necessary step. That's the process. I think if you ask people at a local, state, or federal level, what bothers them the most is that the rules that you pass don't apply to everybody. Well, if they don't apply to the municipality itself, then what are the rules for? You can't just bypass everything you want that you ask everybody else to do. So, yes, they matter. To me, they matter. They matter really strongly.
And I think it has to go through the historical commission too, and there's a process.
Right.
And so I think if we begin those two steps, that's a piece to the puzzle, with demolition being something that may need to happen, and that's something that it'll begin and continue discussion, and it doesn't mean the building goes down. It might actually even spark its rescue, but either way,
I'm not against what you're suggesting.
So I feel like that would be what we can provide for very little money, the hazardous waste assessment, and for once and for all, understand what it's gonna take to either renovate or demo it from that perspective, and then go through the process to file and seek permission to demolish it from the historical commission, because those all start going through meetings, and it takes a lot of time. And if we begin that with their understanding, we're seeking permission as a potential outcome, we'd like to have that. It doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, but of course, if we get it, we can, and I think we can work towards that, with that being a good outcome. In my mind, a vacant building to me someday is just a catastrophe. I don't know if it's a fire, or if part of it crumbles, or if it just invites riffraff, or if it's just simply something to be embarrassed about. I think it's time to move forward with something.
I'm not against trying to start that demolition process. I think we need to have our ducks in a row, because people are going to ask us pointed questions. I mean, we know the Architectural Preservation Committee, what they're going to say.
We do. They're not going to
initially.
support this.
And, we need to say, it's just not feasible. It's just not feasible to do it. And we need to be able to fully support the fact that the town is not going to do it. I think that's the key. The key is the town cannot afford to do it on its own. If somebody wants us to put out something, maybe we'll do that, but we're going to say we'll put out a round. But I mean, if nobody comes back and says they're interested in the building, then I want to know from them, what is it you want us to do? What you think we can do? So we have to go through that process. It's not even a long process, really.
No, I don't want to, the last time I made a comment about the Architectural Preservation Commission, some members felt disrespected. So I want to be clear that this is this is an exercise to try to find a solution, and certainly is not meant to be disrespectful to any one person. Now, we've had the Architectural Preservation members here, and they seemed overwhelmingly of the idea that the building should be preserved. So I don't see how we tie the disposition of a town building to the decision of 5 people, that ultimately that should be a town meeting decision. So if we can't get beyond that first step of getting 5 people who we already know, or should know, are not in favor of tearing this building down, if we can't get them to agree to this, then how will we even get to town
We
meeting?
make a warrant article to no longer have an architectural preservation district.
Well, short of that, how do you even get to town meeting?
I don't know.
And that's why I'm saying, is it even necessary to even get their approval in this?
I felt that some of the architectural preservation district members knew that it may be necessary, that they said, you can try, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I felt that some of them had empathy for the town, and that it may not be possible. I don't think they're unreasonable people.
Neither do I.
And I think that, we can talk to them and say, listen, we've been trying for a long time, it's not working. What do you suggest we do? The town cannot afford to do this renovation by itself.
I have a very key point that I think would play into our presentation of this to the Architectural Preservation District, is a lot of the outcomes that would save the building require a private enterprise, sale of the land, lease of the land. And I don't think under any circumstance the APDC should be able to force a municipality to relinquish a historic piece of land. I've always talked about the land, and so as we move forward, I would say, if their outcomes say, you must sell this building, I don't think there's any legal grounds in which a group of that nature could say, we must sell land. Because the land belongs to the town, and the land trumps the building. And so that's always been what I've thought of the most, is how can these pieces of land, somebody came up to me today and said, I don't want town hall and TCP. If you're going to spend $10 million, I'd rather see it over on the old primary site. Well, and they said, so what's with your town green? I said, my town green, you can build your town hall on it. Because my whole thing has always been, preserve the municipal land here in Center as we grow our town, so we can use them. We've moved, this building got moved, et cetera. We all know Eagle House moved. And so it's always been about the land since I've been talking about it. And so that's whereas people say, but it could be this, but it could be that. I think we can simply say, but the town has said they'd like to keep the land. Conveyance has been brought up 3 different ways at 3 different town meetings over the last 4 or 5 years. And they fail because I think people don't want the land sold. So using that core piece of information, if people say it could be a this, it could be a that, it could be a this, and it falls into the category of needing to sell it, I think we just stand behind the fact we'd like to preserve it. And if we want to keep our land, that's what we stand
Yeah, we
behind.
can't, no committee can force the municipality to sell it.
Yeah, and so if they say there's an outcome for this building, you must sell to such and such.
Well, they can't,
No,
they don't
they
have to.
can't.
We need to review the APDC bylaws, because, you know, when the historical commission has to review demos, they have a demo delay, but it's not indefinite. They can't delay it forever.
Yep.
They can ask you to do certain things and not. And if there's a timeline and there's a clock, and I don't know, okay. If there is such a
Enter
thing. I
Mr.
haven't reviewed-
Bernie.
And I suspect we're not going to like what Mr. Burnett has to say.
But we can change it because it's government.
Well, that's the first thing, is it's a bylaw, so town meeting always has the option to amend, modify, delete. You only need to go to the APDC. The Historic Commission doesn't have
I
any
understand.
role within the Architectural Preservation District.
Okay.
The APDC has been given demo delay powers. The bylaw gives them the ability to definitively deny demolition. So it's not, you have to wait 6 months and then you can demo it like everywhere else. It gives them the power to definitively say, no, you can't tear a building down. Now, there are remedies through the courts or otherwise, which is not really an attractive, for
Fight
against board
ourselves.
is never really a fun proposition. The other piece of, I guess, advice I would give the board is, if you are going to approach the APDC, I would come with multiple alternative scenarios of, we want to demo it, and here's option 1 for how we retain the historic character or pay homage to. Here's option 2, here's option 3, rather than going and say, we want to demo it, but what do you want us to do? Because my sense is they're going to say, don't demo it, that's what we want you to do. So having some alternative plan for replicating the building on site in some way, whether it's through a facade or a plaque, or retaining aspects of it as part of whatever town green or restroom facility or whatever may be planned there, may be a carrot of, the beginning of a bridge of, maybe we can find a way to get there, as opposed to, well, we want to tear it down, but what do you guys think? How should we get around that? Because I've seen them deal with private landowners who have done things, and they can and are a reasonable group of people, but if you ask their advice is going to be adhere to what the bylaw says, as opposed to, oh, you've proposed this alternative, let us look at it and see how we can evaluate that and how we can make it work. So that's just...
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Mrs. Adams.
I feel like maybe one of our goals could be to do a bylaw change for this. It seems like a huge overreach for somebody to not, meaning the APDC, present a process. If somebody says this building stays indefinitely, there's no budget for that, there's no plan for that. Do we have to start throwing money at it to be nothing? There's something wrong here.
I'm not ready to make that a goal yet, so.
Well, and I would give you the history of it, in that as part of the creation of the village district and the introduction of additional commercial type uses to an area that was historically residential, the Historic Commission presented some fears of significant houses or collections of houses being demolished to become CVS or Popeye's Chicken or whatever. And so the idea with the Architectural Preservation District at the time was, we have a way to remedy money disposing of historic properties out of convenience. And I think that it wasn't intended specifically to penalize or be harsh on municipal properties. It was intended to look at the totality of the district, which includes a significant portion that is a National Register historic district, and the collection of properties within that. And the fabric of those properties creates what qualifies that as a National Register district. That doesn't offer any legal or regulatory protection. So what they were looking for is something that went between no protection and what a local historic district would do, where they could tell you you can't paint your house a certain color because it's not historically accurate. And they sort of settled on this bylaw that we have now. And, you know, perhaps an indefinite prohibition on demolition is an overreach, but the intent is to have the properties be maintained and not get to the point where they are in need of demolition because they're not properly maintained. So, this particular property sort of is in an in-between.
Is there any clause in there that deals with something that is too far gone?
I would have to go back.
Because then
and
you
look
reach
through
a
it
point
again.
where
neglect.
something is.
Well, there is a demolition by neglect, but it's intended to prevent.
What I mean, something's considered now a hazard.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be a point.
Anything that gets condemned. If the building is deemed by the building inspector to be a danger, then you
Correct.
can knock it down, and then there's no delay on anything.
And that, you know, then you get into proving that it's a structural hazard as opposed to an entry hazard or
I'm not looking to
otherwise.
test, as you.
No,
probably know.
I don't think
I'm
that
not
you
looking
are.
to test the bylaw. What I'm trying to do is really approach, and I agree with your assessment that they're reasonable people. I know them. I know almost all of them personally. I just want them to be able to assess the difference between some of the things that may come up, and especially the difference between a municipality who may say, this building is going to take millions, and we're going to be at an impasse forever until it does become condemned, because if they tell us, we're not going to knock it down, you have to renew it or you have to sell it, we're going to say, we're not going to sell it and we can't fix it because town meeting, we'll put up, year after year, we'll put up $9 million to redo this and it'll get knocked down. And then where are we? We're just at a building, we get to the end in a much longer
Yes.
path, and I'm trying to encourage people not to go down that path.
And I agree with you, and I think that a lot of it's in how you approach them and what the
Right.
what the set of data you bring with you is.
But this becomes, to me, you know, Selectman Adams brings up a good point with regards to the bylaw, because this becomes, if we decide that we don't like what the APDC has to say, and we just go ahead and do it anyway, right? Now, the APDC cannot, well, they can try to sue us, but we have to approve the money for the lawsuit, which we could then therefore do. What I'm getting at is that all this stuff becomes so convoluted because we've created a system that clearly has a flaw in it, right? The flaw is that we have an unelected body that gets to, that only we can appoint, that gets to decide the disposition of a building that everyone has to pay for and look at and deal with. And that maybe we do need to reevaluate how we've structured this when it comes to town property. That the town should not be beholden to 5 unelected people. Now, this is not, without respect to the current members who are on the body, I agree that they're respectable, honorable people. It's not about them. It's just we've created this
You have-
dynamic.
So certainly, the tension exists, okay? But I think you're really jumping the gun to the end. They have not issued that, because we have not put in a request for it yet.
No, but they've told us that we're in violation of the bylaw already, and that we are doing
They have thrown up a
demolition.
yellow
of the-
flag that we don't want that to happen. But if we go back saying this is, well, first of all, the Architectural Preservation District was created well after that building was vacant, all right? So, you know, the whole idea potentially of demolition by neglect is already, you're coming in the middle of the story. Like, you can't tell me I should have done something 7 years ago. I'll go get my Wayback Machine and I'll go fix it 7 years ago or 10 years ago. That's just not going to happen. Okay, exactly.
But continuing in action is
and
there.
and I don't want to preempt, I don't want to get to the end of the argument when we haven't even gone through the beginning or the middle. I want to talk with them and see what we can come up with. And I think some of that has to do with documentation. I think that the hazardous material assessment is a great one. I think we should come up with a structural analysis. I've been saying that for months, and we have had, you know, various people give us their indications, but if we need to do one, then we should do one for real. and come up with things saying, listen, even the professionals are saying that this will take millions to do. And if you want to put us out, all right, we'll put it out to bid for 9 months. And if nobody comes back in 9 months, you agree that we can't find anybody and the town isn't going to fund it. I mean, we have to come up to something where all the parties agree. I don't want to say, oh, the bylaw's bad, we should knock it down, we should go to court, they should sue us, we should break.
No, I'm not suggesting that they should either.
But these are all the scenarios that I've heard.
Well, and I'm mentioning them to point out an obvious conflict, which is that anyone else who does not agree with a decision by the Architectural Preservation District, they can exercise their rights in court. And we will stand behind the Architectural Preservation District and defend their decisions. But when it comes to us, that there's an obvious conflict, that they do not have a way of enforcing a decision against us if we don't like it. And I'm saying and regardless of, that because of this scenario is a problem that still has to at some point get addressed.
I think it is in our presentation, and I don't know if it begins with some type of letter, but I think we start with not us and them, but the town, what we've learned from the town. Sadly, the town's given up on this. Like, I used to go to meetings like charrettes with 30 people and whiteboards and drawings, and people just like, whatever, they're not going to do anything, so I'm not going to waste my night. So like, we've had all that hustle and bustle, and a lot of this information has surfaced at senior center charrettes held at the high school community rooms. And we're going back like 2.5 years. And so I think we start with not us and them, but we're trying to do something right by the town. We're trying to move a problem forward. And we just collect it with facts and not opinions. The facts are, we've created a survey that was born out of people at town meeting, which we thought was a group of people we'd have to seek permission from for spending. How do they feel? Then we have the outcome of a variety of articles. One was our, demolition, how do people feel about it article from the fall. We have the results from that. We have the results from land conveyance articles. And I think if we compile the conveyance articles, I think 2 applied to that, because during one of them it had already existed and then it unexisted and it re-existed. I don't know if you followed that.
No, but okay.
There's 3 conveyance articles if you go back into 2016 that occurred, but the first time the selectmen already had the right to convey that property because of the 2009 senior center attempts. And then in the amendments made in the second round of conveyance articles, inadvertently, the conveyance to that through the selectmen was lost. And so the conveyance articles, only 2 of them applied to that parcel, because the first one, it already existed. But anyways, you take all of those articles, you take what we did with the fall, which was just to get a feeler during the vote, but we also did this. And we write in our letter, we're trying to find a solution for town center and this building. This is the input from our community to the best of our ability. We know that would cost a lot of money. We think we'd like the land. For me, I'd say I would like an alternative to the lower common, because there's no parking, there's no ADA compliant accessibility, and it makes me nervous, like having my kids there at band concerts because of the increasingly fast traffic on Lancaster and
That's
Loomis.
not going to persuade the APDC, but
But we
okay.
can put in little ideas that if it were a town green, this would be an advantage to town center. If we needed a site in the future for a municipal building, it's right where we need it to be. And above all, parking. Like, owning that lot gives us the ability to provide parking to try to enhance business in town center. So I think if we compiled, like, this is how these thoughts could help the town. We're seeking permission so we can potentially plan. I think it's presentation and having the discussion.
I agree, we have to come with facts, and I think going to them at the right time and preparing for that, I think is good.
So can we put together a letter or start to like compile all those like things we're talking about so that we can present it? Who would compile and how would we do
I
it?
think that would be a workshop. I mean, if we're not thinking big, so I came in tonight's meeting thinking we were going to propose a project. Like
So did I.
projects, yeah, so that's what I thought. if we're gonna propose to 2020 town meeting that we're gonna wait another year and we're gonna ask for a hazardous materials assessment, that's not gonna fulfill our goal. And that's not gonna be the movement that people are looking for. I think they're looking for, what are we doing with that, like, in a real sense?
So do I, and that's.
Can we get with the APDC soon?
Sure.
But we have to have these articles finalized in what, a month? I mean,
March 16th is the deadline.
yeah. Oh, so, all right. I mean, ultimately, an article at town meeting to demolish that building, if that article passes, without us going through the APDC committee, is it a valid article?
Well,
I mean, can we even, we set this goal, but can we even propose to tear that building down?
Yeah, we'd have to note in there that we'd have to go through the proper channels and hearings, but we could certainly, I don't see that approving an article like that, even if it has hurdles that we need to do, I don't think it's.
Isn't
You know,
that in
it's just like-
essence what
it's
you
just
did
like-
in the fall?
Right.
I mean, unless there's a dollar value,
Right, I was gonna say, we need a
Attached to
few
it.
$100,000 to demo it.
Well, what do we want to do, what does this board want to do with the land? Given all the information we've had and all the things we've communicated, does this board have a consensus about what we would like to see done with that building and land?
Selectman Adams has proposed a town green. I know I had a variation on it, but I absolutely will support tearing down the old primary school, turning it into a park, slightly, expanding the little parking lot there, and I think that accomplishes what we, I think, set out to do. And I think that that's something based on the input that we've already been given. I mean, I know that 58% based on this rank, if we just, based on the ranked choice survey and also just the net data, we had enough support for a parking lot with green space and a town green to get to 2/3 support. So, I mean, I don't see how this would fail. The only hurdle here is the unintended consequence of us creating the APDC with.
It's not a
Hold on. Let's work out the details. Let's start at the vision and then build a path back. Let's start with that first. What would you like to see done with this?
I originally would have liked to have seen senior housing, but I don't think that the town can do this alone. So I can see that if we turn it into a town green, you still, as Katie mentioned, you still in the future could use it to put a building on. It's land, it's preserved, you're not putting a building on it now, so you're preserving town land, which I think is a good thing. So if you turn it into a green, simple green, not put a lot of extra money into it, I'd be happy with that.
It'd certainly be prettier than what we're looking at.
And I would say that I'm fine if we decided to propose that or recommend to town meeting that we demolish the building and put a park, whether we call it town green or a park of any kind, the moniker is not important to me. I'm behind that. I can get behind that. Something has to be done. We've agreed in our goals that enough people have come to each one of us individually and probably collectively that says something needs to be done. So I think we should start that, and that's what we should shoot for as the article. And then we work with the town manager, and this is where I turn to you, to find out, okay, how is the best way to put this into the budget? We are at the beginning of the budget season, the beginning of the warrant being open. Knowing this was our goal all along, what is the best way to approach getting this done? And then we can work out the details of what we need to do to get there, after we have the vision at least.
I think that's a good strategy.
So what do we need to do? Because this is obviously going to cost money.
well, we would need a definitive figure,
Okay,
or, what are you asking to do? Just to demolish it? You asking to do the you know.
Some site work for safety would have to be included.
Well, here's what we can do. Here's another thing we can do, which is exactly the article that's underway now for the TC Passios, which is, we ask town meeting to agree that that's what we're going to do, and we apply funds of which plans we have next year to put together that the board can approve, and we'll have, if it has to be approved at special town meeting or whatever, at least people can see it. We're not gonna get plans about what we're gonna do with it in any final state between now and
That's
town
true.
meeting. There's no way we're gonna do that.
And if you're making it a park, I would include the Parks Commission into this
Yeah,
discussion
that's
too.
my second
Yeah.
thing, is who has to be involved? So we.
Is the gazebo a park? It's not. I don't think we have to give everything to parks. I think this should just be a
Well, I said
municipal
park.
common.
I said park, so if we say common, so then it wouldn't be the
A town
Parks Commission.
common, because I think Parks is getting overburdened with, I mean, we have playgrounds in Marshall Park. I would like a town common that sort of belongs to the municipality and isn't belonging to the Parks Commission. Like the gazebo. Michael, does
The
it,
Parks Commission doesn't have anything to do with that. piece
the
of land.
gazebo,
Okay.
does anybody remember the little hat shell that we had? Because that's part of what I see this space as, is out behind where the Kevin's Gate and the high school is now, and parking lot and everything. There was a mini hat shell, just like in Boston. That's where our band concerts were. So even though the gazebo's always been there, and I wouldn't remove the gazebo, it's in and of itself its own space. I'm not suggesting we like get a crane and lift the gazebo. That can stay. But we had this little hat shell, and when we had our bonfires and events, the band would get together in that little covered pavilion, and that's where our music was. And we'd run around and everything, and there was no traffic, there were no roads. We were in sort of this safe nestled spot behind the high school. And all the parking for the high school was available whenever there was an event, because it wasn't during school hours where we'd have our bonfires and things. And so that's sort of what I envision, where you make a space superior to the lower common, where you have musical events or some food trucks there, where you're creating this little town gathering space that doesn't have all the roadways around it.
Okay. I understand.
So hat shell was good.
So we'll get who needs to be involved, but can we structure an article that commits the town to doing this and applying money toward the design and final design, and that gives us time? We can put in the money for the structural analysis, we can put in the money for the hazardous waste assessment, and the building and the design of whatever the park's gonna be like after the demolition, and approach it with that, and saying that the actual construction will be depending on what the design is going to be. But this will get us started along those lines.
Yes. Yeah, we'd have to look at, the figure, the funding, how it would be funded,
I think we need to.
possibilities of.
I just think we have to, it's our goal.
Yeah, this could be a capital exclusion project.
Well, if we put a capital exclusion project on it, we might as well not put it on, because
Right,
it will not,
right.
it will fail, probably. Well, if it's not fully fleshed out, it will. If, we're not gonna do it without a final plan. If we're
here's-
gonna go to a capital exclusion, I think we need to have a final plan.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of a debt exclusion.
Here's the thing, this is so minimally expensive compared to like the TCP. We always seem to be throwing money at studying that, and the outcome's gonna be a $10-15 million project, if not more. We really can't lose sight on the fact that this will be $500,000 or less, and a really good outcome for town center.
Disagree
And
with you.
so I think we just need to do it. Like, I think like.
Yeah, but we still gotta fit it into the budget we have, which is why
No,
we
but
have
we're
a town
just getting
manager.
started, and I've heard things like all these new little jobs being tossed around and stuff. And
No, not
as-
more. I hope
As
not.
we talk about the big picture, this is not something we want in terms of the building. I'm not talking about the park. It's something we need to work on. That's why we set it as a
Again,
goal.
I don't disagree.
So I feel like there's a resistance here to working on it. I think it should be like let's.
I have no problem with an article being submitted, but I can't commit to saying how it's gonna be funded
Right.
at this point. We're still at the very beginning of the budget process.
That's why it's a good time.
Right. Well, it would be interesting to see what you would come out. I think, and I wish Damon was here, I'm sorry that he's not, I'd like to get his input, so, Damon, when you watch this, please give us your input. Because I really would like to hear what he has to do, but I think we have kind of unanimity, which is rare in these times that we live in, to try to get to that, because I think it's clear. I agree. I wanted senior housing. The rest of the board at the time wanted senior housing. We tried for 7 years. It turned out to be at a terrible time with the economy falling apart in 2007 and 8, and it just didn't happen. And now I think it's kind of foregone that we're not going to get anybody to try to rehab it. I don't see it. If anybody out there has somebody who wants to rehab a building, if they have some HGTV program that I saw somebody post on Facebook, rebuild the town, that's great. I mean, I'm all for it if somebody wants to do that. But in light of some other third-party entity, the town is not going to, with all the other things we have to do, is just not going to address that building.
I think that, I'm really trying to be positive tonight, you guys. But what I'm struggling with is I'm thinking of town meeting, and I'm thinking of the comments that I expect people to make. So, one comment is, we had this lengthy kind of discussion about the APDC and my thoughts about that. Now, if we push an article before ever going to the APDC to get their approval, I think it smacks to what I was speaking of earlier today, in which it seems as if it's a foregone conclusion. Now, I'm not saying this negatively about us, but I'm speaking to the people who, for the most part, don't watch all of our meetings, as most people don't. And then, and I think that people have a general suspicion anyway of government, especially these days. So how do we propose an article to move in this direction if we don't first get that step taken care of?
Well, I think go ahead, Mrs. Locke.
Oh, I was going to say that, when we wanted to buy the Saliba property, we said we wanted the town vote contingent on the funding, the grant funding being available. So it can be contingent on the APDC approval.
Now, for a person who, who is not maybe as informed as we are about the inner workings of our own government, and they say, well, but wait a minute, the APDC, I don't remember voting for the APDC, so this is, I think that this creates a dynamic where we need to also address the second issue, which is how we manage that I think we do need to build in an exception for town property, that it has to come, all approvals, demolitions, et cetera, that town meeting is the only body that can approve or deny that. Because I think that there's a reasonable argument from residents that no matter what they want, no matter what they all vote for, that it all comes down to a body that they don't even get to elect.
Well, a lot of bodies make rulings. Conservation
They do.
Commission makes
They
rulings,
do.
and they don't get to elect them
I
either.
think that there's something
So-
to look at with the APDC bylaws and discussion, but I think we can separate it from moving forward.
Well, I think, first of all, to directly address one of your questions, it's like, how do we bring that to town meeting before we've cleared this hurdle? I don't think we have to clear it, but my intention is not to talk to the APDC until we pass the article either. We want to talk to them now. If this is going to pass, if history has taught us anything about this building, or if anything in Lunenburg, if you don't bring everybody pulling in the same direction at town meeting, it ain't going to happen. Because all you need is one person or two people to start saying, what about this, and just confuse everybody, and then they'll just vote against it. So you need to get everybody involved. You need people to understand, everybody to understand, this has been an ongoing issue. This is going to cost a lot of money to do. This is a positive outcome. We get to keep the land. You got to bring everybody who has some kind of say in this forward together to do that.
Now,
Because if you try to bypass people and you ignore people or groups, you'll get killed.
And
So
also,
to the question, though, of what have we done to try to preserve this building? I mean, what is our answer to that? What have we done to try to preserve this
it
building?
may be that we haven't preserved it because we don't need it.
Well, number one is, we voted, and that's, you even mentioned it earlier, we voted to agree to the $11,000 of the stuff they wanted us to do. Like, we're trying to do this while we decide what to do. Now, we tipped our hand to them when they were here, saying that all of us thought the building should be torn down. It's not a surprise, it's not gonna be a surprise to them, but at least we can say, listen, you asked us to do these things in the meantime, and we're doing them, and we should be doing them.
But I think, on the body of town hall, right, there are going to be people who grew up with this building, who are used to looking at this building, and we can make a good case to tear the thing down, right? And I think that we probably have the votes to get it torn down. But you mentioned.
Already get a
Yeah,
hypothetical yes.
We do have a hypothetical
article
yes, but you
thing.
mentioned something that's a really good point, which is that it only takes a couple of people to say, but look, we've had this building in town for all these years, and we've done nothing with it, and now you just want to tear it down? Why have, it's an architectural preservation district. If someone else came before the APDC and said, you know what, I don't have a use for it, I want to tear it down, are they going to accept all those thousands of reasons, or are they going to have to give a really good argument for why it's no longer viable? And so it's kind of smacks of something that I think appears wrong.
No, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Part of it, the problem was when it was originally given to the town from the school, we didn't have a use for it at that time. And so it was a natural liability and incurrence of expenses for the town without a use to offset that, so.
And there was no APDC.
Yeah, and
And, I was saying that should be a lesson learned for the town. When we consider building a new school, the question has to be, what are we doing with the old school? How are we handling that? Because we just can't keep doing this.
Again, I want to come back to the fact, just to set the record straight, is that we did do that. Having been on the board, we did do that. We said to somebody, we're going to give you, he said it's going to take a couple of cycles to apply to HUD, to the federal government, to get senior housing. That was our plan. We couldn't do multiple plans because for his project, he had to say we had ownership of the land. He had agreements with the town that they weren't going to do anything else. It fell apart. It fell apart because of the economy. So it's not like we didn't do anything or didn't have anything planned. I want to make that clear to people. It got caught in the cycle of bad economy, and then we had nothing else after that. Now, you could argue it's been too long, and I guess you could make a good argument for it, but let's address it, all right? This has been coming up too many times. Everybody has told us that, and the APDC knows that, all right? So they know, they go to town meeting, so they've heard all these things too. I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think they're going to be hardliners necessarily about this, to be a stonewall for something that they couldn't even tell me when I asked them, what architectural period are you protecting? Oh, old schools of 1907 or whatever it was. Like, hey, that's an architectural period? That's just an old building. Not all old buildings are historic.
The cooler school was the center school, and that's already gone, so.
Now, there may be an answer to that, so I don't want to be too flippant, but I do want an answer to that. And I think those are the things we pitch. So.
Mr. Chair, if I
yes.
may. What I feel like we get caught up in sometimes here, like these are hypotheticals of what could happen at meetings. People could stand up, people could this. The best part of what we're planning is to bring it to town meeting, and then we know. Because two people could say this or somebody could feel that. Well, the whole point is to get these things there, because then we know. And so I think you were heading in the right direction. What are our visions? What do we want to put forth? Because we can worry about what the aftermath of what we put forth is, but ultimately we just need to know what the result is. And so I think when we're talking tonight about us and the APDC, I keep saying no us and them. We just gotta focus on the town.
Yep.
And so bringing things to town meeting puts it in the legislative body, the place where we're all together, the place where things can be funded. And so to sort of summarize, and I am open to amending it, but just to get it started, I would like to make a motion that we create a warrant article for Springtown meeting where we ask for the hazardous waste assessment of the old primary building. We get funding for a formal demolition estimate, and funding for the design of the future green space.
So that would be much less, because it won't include the actual demolition. It'll just be all the preemptive stuff, and I'll come
Okay.
to you in a second, Mr. Pesios. So that makes it much less. I'm fine to go with that.
Happy with that? Or
What?
Are we happy with that? Or
Well,
would
I'm
you like
happy
to
with,
be more?
I'm happy with that, as long as we don't make it, hopefully, the demolition and design of the
Second.
park
And-
won't take the whole year.
And
And hopefully, if we get it passed during the summer, leading up, and I don't even know if this is possible, from May to November, can we get that
Yes.
design
And
done?
I would
mean,
like to amend while
Yeah,
we're
What you're doing
discussing.
for stakeholders, your meetings, what's gonna be the process?
Well, I think the stakeholder meetings come before town. meeting.
Right, so would that comes into play timeline?
Okay.
And I would like to amend that we add in there that we add the contingency that we plan to communicate with the APDC, and that our goal would be to bring the rest of
Well, that would be
this
in
to
the
the fall.
presentation. That won't be part of the
I
article.
just want to mention it now.
Okay, all
so
right. I'm
you
just
know.
saying.
Can you hit those three key points again?
The motion that we put a warrant article that requests funding for hazardous waste assessment, that we get formal demolition estimates for the building, and that we do fund the design for the town common that would exist after.
Can you put in a structure, would you be willing to put in a structural analysis fee as well?
Indeed.
Okay.
And I amend to add a structural analysis.
I'll modify my second.
Okay. We'll leave it open before we vote. Mr. Passios?
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street, specifically to what's on the floor right at the moment, being discussed as a motion. I really think the assessment should be done now. It wouldn't cost more than some administrative time to put an RFQ out to find out exactly what the dollar amount's going to be for that assessment. Over the years, since I sponsored the article 3 years ago, I've heard numbers anywhere from $3,000 to $9,000. If it comes in $5,000, $6,000, I can't believe we can't find that amount of money in the present budget. We have free cash every year. We have unfilled positions. We have money that can't possibly be spent unless it gets transferred out of certain line items, just because that money isn't being drawn at this point. So I implore you to push that through now and not make that part of the article for Springtown meeting. I think that can be accomplished. Then it gives you a real number on what the cost of remediation of that property is going to be. The structural assessment, I think, is a waste of money. If you're pursuing demolition of the building, why do you need to have a structural assessment?
Because that gives more background about why, when we approach the APDC, that we need to do it. Is that it's been deemed structurally okay or not okay?
What do those typically cost?
What's this?
Probably the same thing as the
Yeah,
as
they're about
hazardous waste assessment.
$7,500.
Yeah, okay. So I made my point on that. I really think the assessment should be done sooner rather than pushed off to 2021. And I think it can be easily accomplished, to tell you the truth.
Is everyone comfortable with trying to have
We're
that?
gonna ask the person who's most important in this scenario in a second.
Okay. The other thing is that when you are pitching this with the APDC, and I brought this up a number of times, I'm not sure I got to it at town meeting because things crashed and burned there very quickly when the article was on town meeting floor. But there were discussions previous to that year's town meeting of possibilities for that park, and one of them was a historically documented town green. There's a wealth of history to that property. The Historical Society and the Historical Commission are very much aware of that. We see pictures almost monthly coming out of the Historical Society of what that property looked like and what direction you're looking and what was there in 19 whatever. And that type of a historical documentation with plaques spread around the property as part of the overall project would give it that historical significance and document the school itself and all the other stuff that went on that property. Thank you.
That's a great
And I don't-
recommendation.
And I don't have any objection to that. I think that's a great idea.
I think that would be a.
I know that there's been, I know when they built Emerald Place, that they wanted a section to be dedicated to that, and the developers denied that. I know that the Historical Society has lots of paraphernalia from Wareham that could be used in, it could be a historic commemoration park. I'm all for that. I mean, again, I think it's
I
a great
just offer
idea.
it as another point that can be pitched to
Yeah.
APDC.
Yep.
But I think the direction you're heading needs to be pushed. You need to go in that direction for town meeting as well, with getting the demolition and the rest of the costs in line, and funding for it, and get this thing to move forward finally.
That's, reminds me of when I was first getting signatures, I think for, the, land sale moratorium article. That was in my early years. And I was collecting signatures and I went to the Historical Society. And before I even started doing my talking, Bill Tyler came out. And he said, "You know what it should be?" And he pointed over there. He goes, "A park." And I hadn't even started, and I'm like, ooh. And then eventually, at one point, he did send me a picture of children playing on School Street, because that land was recreational land. So I think what Dave's getting at is that there's a history of that land being recreation. I think they used to begin parades there and different things. There's a lot of pictures of recreating on that exact site before the school was there. So you can start to tit for tat history. And again, it goes back to the land. And so I think we could probably have some fun with it. And I've always said, when I get all talking about this topic, is we're almost 300 years old. And so I don't want to celebrate our 300th birthday with things like that sitting there in the center of our town. But when you think of like new spaces and parks and places where we can collect, have band concerts, and then feel like we contributed to turning to 300 in a way that can, better impact town center for however long, it stays. Till a group sits around talking about what to do with it, sell it or something, and we'll roll over.
So I'm going to turn, however unfairly, to the town manager. The two assessments that we're talking about, the hazardous material assessment and the structural analysis, which combine somewhere between, $14,000 and $19,000. Is it feasible, again, with all the free cash numbers we've seen in the past, that we could do that now in preparation of, because I don't think any of these are, either one of those two is lengthy process. Can we do those now in preparation of an article that could be more geared toward the vision of what we want to do and have these in our pocket at the time?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, I'll have to, and I committed to doing it, to reassess the facilities budget.
Okay.
Yeah. And in doing that, I know Dave mentioned there's extra money. In the DPW budget, we have to keep in mind, we've been able to fund our snow and ice deficit at the end of the year by taking it out of that budget instead of free cash. So, and doing transfers within the budget to cover that deficit. And this year seems especially like we reached our, we're in the red now with the snow and ice budget. So it's only January 14th. So.
But there's no money from anywhere in the whole town?
We get a lot of free cash.
Yeah. I mean, we
And free
have
cash
to
you
do
can't use right
something.
now
We have
anyway.
to step forward. This is a small amount of money for a big outcome, and it's our goal.
I just said I do the I just want to do the work
Okay.
to look into it.
So how long do you need to look into
I
that?
should be able to have an update by the next meeting.
Okay.
Great.
All right. So let's not press that. So if we can do that, that would be great, because I think that makes a lot of sense.
So for the taxpayers at home who are upset that their tax bill just went up by $250 or more, how are we justifying the necessity of the structural assessment for them, for a building that we're looking to tear down?
Well, we need to do the hazardous waste material assessment anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm saying the structural assessment.
Well, because again, we need to know what the condition is as we go to the APDC. If it's structurally unsound, if somebody does it and looks at it and says, listen, it's not sound, the roof is not sound, or this and that, then it creates a whole different scenario than it's structurally sound and we just don't want to do it.
Does it change the fact, though, that we still can't afford to fix it?
Yeah, does
Even if it says it's structurally good, we still can't afford to fix it and don't want to. So maybe,
To me, it lends credence. If the board doesn't want to do it, I will vote against it, but again, this is not a dictatorship. I'm just suggesting that it gives us extra information about presenting to not only APDC, But a lot of this is going to be swayed by public opinion in town.
Having the information might muddy the waters even more, so we're spending money on making it worse. Like if it comes out structurally sound, that doesn't help it move forward.
Yeah, that has, well, I don't think it has any impact on the vision that we have all agreed to tear this building down and turn it into a town green and a parking lot. So
I
that would be
agree.
spending taxpayer dollars to convince a board that we should do this, even though it's something we want to do anyway?
That makes sense. So maybe just the hazardous waste. Is that, what do you think?
I'm torn, actually. I can see that if you're doing the structural analysis, lets us know, the condition of the building, and whether there's any hope of being able to revive it. So if the structural analysis comes back that structurally there's some big issues, then it kind of, I do know that at town meeting, you're going to get a lot of people with a lot of different opinions, and if you have the structural analysis information, it's more data.
But
That I think could be useful.
without that, we already got the non-binding yes to tear it down.
Well, that's non-binding.
No, but I mean, that was just to show the spirit in the crowd, and that was without the data. The spirit's already there.
Well,
Oh, wasn't that a close vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was at the very end of the night, near the end of the night. So it was a long, long meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
At that point,
saying
so-
that you voted in favor of it, if it was like by 2 votes, I mean, that can really be
Right.
swayed anytime. So I think if we have the structural analysis information,
Have we ever done one? Structural analysis on that building?
No.
No, okay.
so, I think it's time. I think we're going to need all of the data at our command for this town meeting.
Out of curiosity, when was the last time we did a structural analysis of this building?
I would have to research that. I don't know.
I thought we did one like 5 years ago.
Yeah, it may have been when the building was hit, but around that time when it had to be assessed.
I agree with Michael that it's money being spent on something that isn't involved in our vision, and so then it's just not money well spent.
Yeah. I think I mean, we have an end state that we got to this vision, and now we're backwards planning how we can get this, get people on board to support this, I guess. And part of that is to spend money to conduct a structural analysis of a building that we want to tear down. And while I agree that some people will be persuaded to tear it down because of that, I feel as if we already will have enough people who will support tearing it down without persuading those people.
I would like to amend my motion just for the sake of summarizing it, because it's still on the table, and we're all over the place with that motion.
Okay, great.
So I'm just going to make my motion, and this is my amendment of my motion as a form of a summary of it.
Hold on a second. Would you rescind your second?
Yes.
Okay, remake the motion.
Yeah, okay, so
That
I'm
way we're
going
not-
to cancel.
That way we're not amending anything. Okay, shoot.
What? We have 2.
Can I make a comment?
Sure,
We're going
why
to keep
not?
everything organized.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street again. It's totally your prerogative if you do it as one motion, but in my eyes, you're looking to do 2 things. You're looking for immediate action, and you're looking for action to go to town meeting. I personally would like to see them as 2 separate motions, but it's the board's prerogative.
Okay, I
Thank
think that's a good recommendation. I just want to make sure you weren't saying we already had 2 motions. I thought you were
no,
saying
no,
we
we
have
did
2
not have 2
motions on the
motions.
table.
Okay.
Yes, no, I was going to head in that direction with the motion, but I will separate it into 2. So I would make a motion that prior to town meeting, we do a hazardous waste assessment on the building. And I'll stop at that as being 1.
Second.
Any discussion? To me, it's going to be depending upon, this motion is kind of premature because I want to see if the town
It could be
manager-
as little as 3,000, so I think.
Again, the money is, the exact amount of money is not relevant. If the town manager says we don't have the money, and I'm going to go by.
I
their
don't
thing.
know, I mean, we're the authority, so I mean, there's a.
We're the
sheet-
authority on spending the money?
on requesting
Where are
this.
we getting the money? You made the motion, so where are we getting the money? If you're saying that it's our authority.
If it's $3,000, I think, from the DPW budget, if it's there. And I guess we'd have to see the budget, and maybe that information can come and we can look it over.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So shouldn't the motion be next week when we can see where the money's coming from?
No, I'll make
You're
the motion
authorizing, you're
now.
authorizing us to spend money for something that doesn't have money attributed to it.
And if there's no money, then I would go with what Michael said, is to take the money from the 7,500 we've allocated to the building, because I don't think anything's been done with that money yet.
It has. Just the sump pumps have been installed, but it was.
How much money is left?
That total wasn't $7,500. It was close to 4,000 total. So I believe the sump pumps was around $450 of that total, so around 3,000.
So we know we have money waiting to spend on
earmarked
the
for
building.
that.
Well, we have a vote on that money, what that money's getting put toward.
Okay, I'm just making a motion that we do a hazardous waste assessment, and I hope that the town manager can support our goal.
Or are you,
I don't understand why it's not more optimistic to say, let's do this.
yeah, do you think
Like,
that the motion
where's
should
the
say
negativity coming
dependent
from?
upon the availability of funds? Because I think that that's something that will pass tonight.
Sure, and I would put in the motion, I would be very disappointed and shocked if it worked.
I don't know if you should put that in the
Yes,
motion.
I would like to make a motion that we do something, which would begin with a hazardous waste assessment that we talked about 2 years ago, for that building, for the old
Dependent
primary,
dependent upon the availability of funds?
depending upon the availability of funds, and if not, I will give you my own money.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can you repeat the motion before we?
I would like to make a motion that we do a hazardous waste assessment on the old primary building, if there are funds available.
Second.
Are you satisfied with that?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I would like to make a motion that we make a warrant article, that we fund demolition estimates of the building and fund the design of the future site of which would be a town common.
I would propose to change that language, Selectman Adams, that instead to propose that we secure estimates for demolition of buildings and fund the design, future design for the building.
Yeah, with my lack of voice and my.
You said future design of the building, future design,
Future design of, excuse me,
Of
of
the
the
town
space,
common.
of the town green.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you okay- are you okay with
I
that?
amend my motion to use that language, which
You don't
was
have to amend your
similar.
motion. You just, okay, you amended your motion. You second it?
Second.
All right.
Michael has his thesaurus, and I don't have a voice.
So, summarizing, the motion is to,
Simply get demolition estimates and fund designs of what would be a town common.
So we're gonna have to put an amount to that, but that's the motion. To create a town warrant article, and we're gonna have to put numbers to that, to ask how much we're asking for.
And Dave's been working on this for years, and he's getting antsy.
Well, Dave is not a Board of Selectmen
I
member,
know.
and he can't make
do
amendments.
we need to, have the money amount now?
No, we have to have it by the close of the warrant, though.
Okay. All right.
Any further discussion?
No?
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, we need to know who needs to be involved in this process. So we know the APDC is going to be involved. So we're going to have to address it to them. Does the planning board,
Yes, you actually have a memo in the Google Drive from the land use director. The planning board would like to be
When did that show up?
later on today.
where am I looking at this? I'm on in today's meeting?
So,
A memo from land use director.
yeah. So my apologies for not getting it.
And I
That's okay.
apologize for
sooner.
my jumbled motions. My brain is exhausted.
I feel you. Plus, I think we're all a little frustrated anyway. About other stuff. Okay, so they want to join us in this discussion.
Okay, so planning board, all right.
Did they propose any potential dates to meet with us?
I think we can coordinate
Right.
dates for them outside of this meeting, yeah.
Any other boards that anybody sees, boards or particular? I mean, obviously, it's going to go, the number, when we get it, will go through FinCom, but they don't have to be involved in the meetings themselves.
Can we request, in response to something that Mr. Passios brought up, can we request for the why am I blank? Not conservation, historical commission, to provide us with just some background on the property or even a mini presentation if they're able
The
to?
Historical Society
Historical Society.
is
Hold
where,
on. Why are we asking any historical anything to do anything about this?
I think it would help give us a better frame of reference on the history of the property, if there's any considerations we need to make with future planning.
Okay, I don't know how that assists with this, but
well, we'd have a design committee, wouldn't we, once we had the design funding?
I would assume.
Can I maybe be on that?
Can we maybe pass it first?
Just throwing it out
Thinking
there.
about boards, there was some talk about like restrooms. Do we have access to sewer there anyway?
Yep, yeah,
There's sewer and a septic.
Yeah,
That's the both worlds.
there is sewer there.
Not a board or committee, but a department, the DPW would include, because
I think he's going to be okay with it.
be responsible, just that they're part of the conversation, they're gonna be responsible for
It just says
maintenance.
DPW director.
They already do a really good job maintaining the land. I walk there quite a bit, and I have to say, the grass, and it's pretty awesome that they take care of the land despite the tragic building.
So the ground, there was talk about parks, but Town Green really doesn't, it's not going to be a park space that is going to be under the Parks Commission, I don't think.
Because I don't want athletic fields
envision
and
it.
all that stuff going
that's
on there.
okay.
I want it to be
One at a
immune.
time.
So
Right.
including the DPW, because they'll have to maintain.
Right, they'll have to
Yeah.
maintain it, but I
The
mean, the Parks is not
landscaping.
going to have to schedule it or anything like that. It'll be like the town,
Just a green-
the town
yeah.
green that we have now, the Commons. It'll just be under the town control directly through the board, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that little space next to the senior center is the same thing, right?
Maybe the
Memorial.
farmer's
Where we
market,
have the,
Oh, Veterans Park?
Yeah.
Oh, Agricultural Commission,
Agricultural
they might
Farmers
be
Market.
interested.
because they've expanded so much that they might wanna consider use of the space long.
Is anyone interested in a to whom it may concern letter where we write up sort of everything we talked about tonight in terms of the vision and what led us here? I'm just basically volunteering to try to write something and
To send to whom?
for us to look at a meeting and see if it would help sort of explain where we talked about the town and the data we've collected and I could, reference the ranked choice voting and reference the different articles that sort of led us to work on trying this so that we can summarize.
you just
sort
want to
of our
summarize where
vision.
we are?
You want to write that and bring it to the next meeting
And
for our approval? Sure.
not opinionated, just like, just
Okay, I
like,
can't wait.
these are the facts that are helping us see if this is a path. Because I think there's a lot of facts, that we put them in one little write-up. It's an easy way to digest, like, that this isn't random. That there's a lot of history to trying to solve this
You
parcel
want
space.
to write something to present to the board next week for us to review?
Yeah,
Actually,
or even just for our own, but if it makes sense, it can be like to whom it may concern to the APTC, it might be a way to.
I'm trying to agree with you, by the way.
No, I'm just thinking out
If you
loud.
want to write such a thing and submit it to us, so we can review it. I'm more than happy.
No, I'm just continuing to think out loud. That's just the way my brain works.
Okay.
It's just thinking.
Keep saying yes, go ahead.
Yep, and I keep thinking what I'm gonna do. It's not a negative thing, it's just, I think out loud.
Okay.
This looks like
Anybody have any other items that we want to talk about? Because I think, we've had a good hour and a half, hour and 45-minute conversation about
In
this.
regards to the workshop,
Yeah, yeah.
no, I got a couple of public comments.
Okay, no, I'll get to that. If you're still with us, I'm assuming that you have public comment.
I think this was a robust discussion that allowed us to get through a full action, and now we're on to the next, so.
So I am going to say, unless somebody objects, that we have completed action double I. So we are on to triple I. By default, since we're only going on one option, 4 is really moot. So we don't have to determine one if we only have one. We can choose between 1 and none, I guess.
We've already done 4.
If something gets, that's what I'm saying. It's already gotten, well, we never had two choices, because they really,
Well, is it going to be a parking lot with a town green or a town green with a parking lot?
It's gonna be similar.
pull everybody before they go in and then pitch it to them separately.
And we can battle that out.
Okay, so no old business. Upcoming meetings, we have a meeting next week, and then we have a meeting on the 28th, which I believe, big surprise, because this is my big travel time of year, I will not be at 28th, unfortunately. So. I do apologize for the absences, but work is work, what can I say? Public comment from the public.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Two comments. One, back to fall town meeting and the article for asking town meeting if they wanted to demo the building. If we ever, I implore you that if you ever do that again, that you insist that it be a hand count at town meeting. Both sides have claimed victory on that article, saying, oh, it was a very close vote. Oh, no, it wasn't. Well, there's no definitive count to say, yes, it was, yes, it wasn't, or it was right down the middle. I really believe that if you're going to get real data from something like that, you need to insist on a hand count. That's that point. Thank you. The other is your discussions about the bylaw in regards to the APDC. I agree there is a flaw in the bylaw, and the flaw is that there is no process for relief from an absolute decision by the APDC. I think that is what needs to be corrected in that bylaw. Don't make it easy, but have a process for relief from an absolute decision for demolition of a building, and make that available to everybody, not just the town.
And I think by default, and I would ask the land use director, because I think he would have information about this, but I think by default, if none is given on a determination, then it's a court appeal.
But why does it have to go to that if you write the bylaw correctly and give relief, say, at town meeting or some other process? And again, like I
I'm just
said,
saying,
don't make it easy.
you indicated, and I was just trying to correct the record, that there was no recourse. That's not true. There is recourse in any decision made by a town body, whether it's against a municipality or a private
Right,
landowner.
but in this
You can
case,
take the planning
municipality
board, or you can
against
take-
a municipal board who is, funding is controlled by that board, you don't have a viable option, I don't believe.
Well,
I agree.
again,
We'd be taking ourselves to court.
Right.
You can do
In
that.
effect, you'd be taking
Yes.
yourself.
And
Yes.
wasting,
Do that.
Well, it'd be awkward.
Okay,
I wouldn't vote for
thank
that.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Passios.
okay, any final public comment from the board?
Yes, I want to just, I mentioned earlier today about the importance of a facility manager in town, and I want to, be clear that I think that, we should not add positions because we think that they're great ideas. I think there's a lot of really good ideas and really cool things that we could do as a town, but I think that our positions that we have should be out of necessity. And I think that when we have hundreds of millions of dollars in buildings, it is a necessity to have a management structure that oversees these buildings as a standalone department, as other communities who don't have the same struggles we do with buildings do. So I just want to just restate that, and I don't think that this is something that's a short-range target, but I think in the bigger scheme is something that we structurally have to work on and progress towards. So that way we do not find ourselves in this position again.
So I have a question about that comment, and that would be, do you have a town of our size in mind that has done that?
So, well, yes. So even if we look at Air, which is a smaller community, granted they have a lot more commercial property, they do have a facility manager. And the facility manager reports directly to the town manager. Now, if you go to Air, you drive through there and you look at their buildings are in excellent condition. They have a very old town hall that is very well maintained. When they, removed their former police department and built their new one, the previous building was torn down. When they, relocated their fire department, same thing, because they had staff available who could do this. As far as cities go, almost every city has one.
Cities are
But
cities.
we're not a city,
Right.
but we're not a city. So, I can look into, when I did this research before, every town that I looked into that I drove through and was like, their buildings look nice, they all had facility managers. But I can look in to see, the towns that we are more commonly compared to and see what they're doing.
Okay. Any other board comment? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.